Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
Well, it might seem a little strange coming from a Republican who supported John McCain, but for me, the 2008 election was very exciting, even though, of course, I was supporting John McCain, because knowing that he was unlikely to win, the prospects of having either the first female president of the United States or the first African-American president of the United States was very, very exciting. So now we fast forward to our 2012 election, and many people, particularly overseas, are puzzled as to why the race could be so close. Jobs, economy, deficit. And that's really the sticking point. And many of you are familiar with these statistics. 23 million Americans out of work or stopped looking for work. Median income has gone down in families by over $4,000 for those that do have jobs. Many say, look, Obama inherited a really bad economy, so he should be given 4 more years to try and tackle this. But the problem with that is, just look at Prime Minister Cameron. He's been in office for 2 years, and no one is saying that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, should be given a break, or Cameron. They want to know what their politicians are doing now to resolve things. For many, particularly the independents, some of the foreign policy has been disappointing. And it started when Obama did not meet with the Dalai Lama. Now, I know that's very symbolic, but there has never been a president who did not meet with the Dalai Lama when he came through Washington, D.C. Obama was planning on going to China. He felt that it would be good for the relations not to sort of poke a finger in their eye, but it was seen as positioning the United States in putting that politics over the human rights cornerstone of American foreign policy. Another area of disappointment is the Middle East, because, of course, Obama as a candidate was very critical of the previous administration for sort of giving up on the Middle East situation. And so that was going to be a focus. And yet the high-level negotiations, as we know, haven't been taking place, I think, for 2 weeks over 2 years. So that's another disappointment. The view is that there's been a pivot to Asia, and there has been sort of a forgetting or a not enough appreciation of the allies and partners that America has to work with in order to have effective foreign policy. And then the leading from behind with Libya, sort of a reluctance to see America in a leadership position and to play that role internationally. Syria, there's concerns, and of course, Libya and Benghazi, you are quite aware, I'm sure, of all of the concerns of that debacle that's taken place. So the result is that the pride in his election remains, his likability is high, but the disappointment is real, and the thought is there an alternative? And so we can talk about the debate and the alternative.
Great, thanks a lot, Colleen. And Sarah.
Well, I too woke up at 3 a.m. on election night in 2008. I actually popped awake, and I hadn't set an alarm or anything. I popped awake, and my husband kind of sleepily rolled over and what time? This is a totally true story. He said, what time is it? And I said, it's Obama time. It's time for change, right? And I was that excited. Totally true story. I was like, you're insane. And turned on the television, and there it was. It happened. I come from Chicago, so I was watching Obama in Grant Park, and it was a transformative experience. I think not just for many Americans, but for many people around the world. There was this sense that something new was happening. We all knew that nobody could live up to the hopes and expectations that Obama brought with him into office, and he has certainly not done so. I am also disappointed in Obama, like Colleen, but I'm disappointed in him for different reasons. I'm disappointed in him from the left. I'm disappointed in in what I see as undermining of civil liberties. I am very disappointed in his decision to support kill lists. Disappointment isn't a strong enough word for that. I am outraged by it. I am completely opposed to it. And this kind of, targeting people who they deem threats to America without due process, without any kind of trial. That's not the America that I grew up with. That's not the president that I thought I was voting for. I can certainly, with conviction and passion, vote against Mitt Romney. Romney has refused this week to distance himself from the remarks made by Richard Murdoch that
he definitely distanced himself.
Not this as of this morning. I was checking it. Yeah. Anyway, he's made a fine distinction without much of a difference. And I'm sure you all know the remarks that I'm speaking about. That if a woman is raped and gets pregnant, it was the will of God. There really is a question about what he would do when he's in office because of the famous flip-flopping means that I genuinely don't know what his policies would be because he was a moderate governor, but he has swung so hard right in the campaign on almost every issue that matters. I mean, I certainly agree with Colleen that what this election is going to come down to is the economy. But it's important to understand that part of the debate about so-called Obamacare is also in many Americans' minds part of the debate about the economy. That a lot of people see that as having been an unfair tax, that they're paying for something they don't think they want to be paying for. And it really comes down to the same thing that American policy debate often comes down to, which is, and when we've never resolved it, the question between individual aspiration and collective responsibility. The idea that Paul Ryan, adheres to Ayn Rand's notion of this kind of radical libertarian individualism that says that, you build a business on your own, and Obama says no entrepreneur builds a business on his own. The far right in America takes that as this completely outrageous statement. But it seems to me that it's demonstrably true. Mitt Romney didn't get where he is on his own. That's just a fantasy. But it's a dangerous fantasy, and it's a fantasy that we need to combat. So as I say, I am disappointed in Obama. I'm disappointed in his decision to extend Bush's foreign policies. In particular, I'm disappointed in his failure to close Guantanamo Bay, one of his central campaign promises. I expect him to fulfill that promise if he is elected for a second term, and I'm hopeful that in a second term he might pursue more liberal policies when he's not pursuing re-election.
Great, thanks very much, Sarah. So Obama's getting it in the neck about the economy. He's getting it from the left about all the things he promised to do and didn't do. Ian, can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, poor Obama. Everyone's disappointed. It must be like being the sort of star pupil at school and then you screw up somehow and everyone's just shaking their heads and saying, we're so disappointed. If I was American, I would vote for Obama. I'm not hugely enthusiastic about him, which seems to be the sort of a common theme. I think in terms of candidate versus candidate, I slightly sort of probably differ from Sarah and perhaps other people in the room, which is I don't think that actually there's a huge amount to choose between them. Because actually I don't think Romney is an ideologue. I think he's a bit of a shapeshifter. I think he'll play to his audience. The two men that have risen to the top of their parties and who are fighting this nomination are both cool, kind of cool-blooded, essentially pragmatic, introverted, slightly awkward geeks. They're remarkably similar to each other in temperament, I think. It's very unlike the contrast between, say, Obama and McCain. There is a big difference, I think, between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. I don't think the Democratic Party is in particularly great shape, but I think the Republican Party is in worse shape. I think its bench of talent is quite small, with obvious exceptions like Colleen. I don't think there's a huge amount of talent that will be going into the State Department or into the Treasury if Republicans take over. And I think they will sort of exert their power over the courts, from the Supreme Court down to the lower courts, in a way that I personally would be worried about. So I think it's important in terms of getting what I consider to be the best party into the White House. After the two candidates, I'm not sure actually there is that much difference. Basically, Obama has a very small, maybe 1%, maybe 2% advantage over Romney, and it's going to be extremely hard for Romney to shift that. So I think he's going to edge it in on November the 6th.
Great, thanks, Ian. Candace, lots of disappointment about Obama. You campaigned for him tirelessly. Are you also disappointed?
I never thought that Barack Obama could walk on water. I never thought that he was as left-leaning as I he went in with a weight of both expectation and loathing, and that is something that we haven't talked about here, the absolute insane loathing. Frankly, I wasn't going to believe that white people were going to vote for the black guy in sufficient numbers until after it happened. That's from Hollywood. You did never believe in anything until after it occurred. And it was a fabulous moment. I don't think ever in the history of this country have we had an opposition that would rather the president fail than the country succeed. And that is insane. Am I disappointed? I'd say I wanted Guantanamo to close. I really did. But when I was in Pennsylvania on the campaign trail, I met Susan Eisenhower, the granddaughter of the president, and I'm thinking she's like her cousin or brother, David. No, this woman was amazing. She is for almost 3 decades has been a major advocate of nuclear nonproliferation. And we were speaking at the same event, and she said, I lived in Washington all my life. People do not understand that this is a huge ship. And just because you want to do something doesn't mean that it's going to change. It's not going to change course. But you add to this the racial loathing of a certain percentage of the Republican Party, which frankly makes the nasty Tories look like a tumble of Andrex puppies. The attitude towards women and women's bodies, which is right up there with the Taliban shooting a teenage girl in the face.
Well, it's not right up there.
Yes.
There's a lot to add, but we'll finish,
yes.
Finish first.
To me, I haven't sat up for the debates because I knew what I was going to do, and I knew that it was important for me to do something about it. So I'm going to go do something and not just sit here and talk.
Okay, thanks very much, Candace. Before we come back to the more heated issues about the respective candidates and their strengths, I want to just cool down for a second and think about what might actually happen and why. So, Ian, you predicted that a narrow Obama victory. I read a few days ago that, bizarre though it sounds, the state of Ohio has more importance in itself than all the other 49 states put together. Can you explain how that might be?
And Ohio is really interesting because it's an anomaly. Obama isn't doing well, really, in the kind of industrial Midwest amongst white working class voters, except in Ohio. The best thing he ever did from an electoral point of view in the last 4 years was take the decision to bail out General Motors and the car industry, because that has basically afforded him a very, very strong position in that state. And it's the biggest thing in his favour in terms of the likelihood of him getting over 270 electoral votes. Okay, thanks.
I'll come to you in a second, Sarah. First of all, Colleen, the Electoral College itself is probably not self-evident to everyone. So just a little bit, what is this 538 number? Why do the states matter? Just a little bit on that, please.
The president needs to get, the candidate needs to get 270 electoral votes in order to become president, and each state is allotted a number of electoral votes. And so, except for 2 states, all of them, if you win that state popularity, you win all the electoral votes except for 2 where they can split depending on what the outcome is. And there's even discussion, which I think is not going to happen, that there could be a tie where it's 269, in which case what happens? It goes to the House of Representatives, which at the moment is Republican, to pick the president, and then it goes to the Senate, which is Democrat, to pick the vice president. So Can you imagine the excitement of Romney as president and Biden as vice president?
Great. That would be good. Sarah, it's something, I know you have a lot to say about something particular about this intense partisanship, which I think is just a bit bizarre to us in the UK, just how...
When you take a long view, when you take the historical view, which I tend to try to do, actually America has always been divided. The fights of the Constitutional Congress were fights over a Puritan theocratic view of America as the city on the hill, and an Enlightenment philosophe view, the Jeffersonian view of liberal democracy, a European notion. And that has run through the country from its founding to the present day, and we're still fighting that fight. So in one sense, we could say that. The other thing I would say, though, about polarization, and I would say it also as a warning to the British, is that it seems to me that the polarization has gotten worse, and it's gotten worse since 1987, when the Fairness Doctrine was abolished under the name of free speech. And the Fairness Doctrine was the rule that said that we had to have exactly your rule, that you have to have a balanced political viewpoint on any political debate. That was abolished under the name of free speech, and so Fox News was made possible, MSNBC then responds, and suddenly you have the echolalia that we all know about. And that has absolutely escalated and accelerated what was already a divide.
Okay, great, thanks. I want to ask if anyone on the panel wants to respond to Candace, because, I mean, the issue of Obama's election in 2008, there was a lot said then about race, but since then I feel as though very little is said, and yet, if I heard you correctly, you were suggesting that a big part of the Republican obstruction is still racial.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It absolutely is.
Absolutely.
Okay, Colleen, do you feel that's the case?
I just don't. I mean, if there's any prejudice about race, creed, sex, it's creed, and it's about Romney being Mormon. I mean, that's what all the discussion.
One second, we'll come to it. We'll give you the first question. Okay, 1 second.
Is about.
I have to say that when we were dealing with the phone hacking scandal, I was just hoping that something would happen to cut the kneecap Fox News, because what Fox News has done to discourse in the United States has been catastrophic. And part of it is, I don't believe that most of those guys believe, or women, believe what they're saying, but it makes money, and it feeds into, people are desperate, and when people are desperate, they're looking for a quick solution. For a moment, they thought that Obama was a quick solution. The economic situation is horrible, and so let's just, but rather than do that, let's yell and scream about abortion and call the president a boy and a tar baby. Yeah. You know,
who said that?
Sarah Palin, yes, Sarah Palin talked about him shucking and jiving. You know, these are code words in the United States. This talks about race, and I do not believe, even back in, the New Deal, times when it has been really vituperative differences, everybody believed in America and wanted to move America forward. Now you have people saying, I want this guy to fail.
I totally agree.
Okay.
Rather than the country just succeed.
Give you a chance to just maybe help sort of help us out of this.
Well, for what it's worth, my opinion is that race is not really a factor. It's not much of a factor on the Republican fervour or sort of opposition to Obama. I think they just think he's incompetent, out of his depth, and was too inexperienced to be elected president. There is a minority, a very small minority, I think, who are, racist and just hate the fact that there's a black man in the White House. They tend to be concentrated around certain sort of Appalachian regions. But I think it's a bit unfair to characterise the whole Republican opposition to Obama as
I'm not
racist.
talking about the whole.
Great. Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. I want each of the panelists to please tell me what they think is going to happen, why, and whether they like that fact or not.
I think Obama is going to inch forward, inch in. But it's going to be a cliffhanger, and it depends on people getting out to vote.
Okay, yeah.
Getting out to vote.
I now think that the Democrats should probably have elected Hillary Clinton as their nominee last time around. I think that we underestimate the value of experience. I don't think Obama is in the same class as Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton. And actually, I see him in the same relation as Cameron is to Blair. Both Blair and Clinton, that generation, were in politics for a long time before they got to the top. Right? Blair was an MP for 14 years before he was elected Prime Minister. Clinton had been in Governor of Arkansas. And by the time they got to the White House, they were reasonably good at sort of operating the levers of power. Obama just doesn't have that, and I think it has really showed.
Okay, Sarah.
Look, I have to say, I think Obama's going to inch it just because I have to believe that my country is going to remain sane, that we don't want to see, and that we're still reeling after 8 years of Bush, and there are enough people who don't want to risk going back into those policies, which were really disastrous. But look, there's a real chance that Romney could get in. It's absolutely going to be a nail biter.
Colleen, you seem quite sane. What do you think will happen?
It might be wishful thinking, but I do think that Americans are reluctantly going to vote to say we need someone that might be bringing us the sort of pragmatism, as Ian has said, and problem solving that is going to fix the course of America. And people feel that America's on the wrong course and that they are looking for someone who's a problem solver to make that difference.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm not sure if that's a happy note or not to end on, but I want to thank you all for, thank all the panelists, and thank the RSA Fellows who made this event possible, and thank the audience for being here. Thank you very much.